Yeah, so I don't know. You guys okay? We'll go ahead, I think. Yeah, three of
All
us.
good.
Yeah,
Yep.
I'm good to go.
All right.
I did have a
Yeah.
question.
Sure.
How much inspiration did we have? Like, since you
Yeah.
brought up that, were we carrying on from what we had pre-break?
No, you're back to one. You've all just got one now, and we'll do the roll in just a sec. So let's chuck that up first. So if one of you wants to roll a d6 for me. Oh, you've already done that. Oh no, that was a d20.
Oh no, that was a D20 for my
Okay. Yep.
storm effect.
Yeah. So if I can get a d6, right, a 4. So Ysille, you have picked up an inspiration point. I would imagine it's from your troll slaying from the day before.
Yeah, yeah, and
Yeah.
it's me telling everyone in the pub about how there's this guy who can just kill trolls in one shot. You know,
That's right.
have you heard about the knot where
Yeah.
there's that one member that killed a troll with
Yes.
one shot,
Yeah.
that kind of
Absolutely.
stuff?
Yeah.
I like the idea of like quickly putting on different disguises to be like, I heard this about him. Puts on another disguise. Well, I heard this.
No, that's great. All right, so that's inspiration roll order. Tom, just before you got here, we were discussing that our inspiration rules. I've made one change on burning inspiration for a spell slot. Not that it has a great deal of relevance for you, but what we're saying now, I've modified it so it's only one inspiration point for to get one level of change. So
Yeah,
sure.
sure.
You know the deal. You got a third level spell slot. You got a third level spell accessible to you, but you've only got a second level slot available. You can burn an inspiration to get back to that third level slot.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So apart from that, that is unchanged. And Windra, you have rolled your storm surge, and unfortunately, it is a pretty clear day. All right. With no option for benefit. So. Not starting that well.
Does that mean that this is one of those days where Windra is mopey?
Yeah, just like
Yeah.
bland.
Yeah. It's sort of a spend the day in the pajamas sort of day. If it wasn't a work day. Yeah, that kind of thing.
You ask her a question, she's just like,
Yeah. It becomes a student of mediocrities.
Yeah. Meanwhile, if you ask her in the middle of the storm, she just like goes on like a literary rant.
A rant. Yeah, absolutely. Waxes lyrical.
Yeah.
In fact, you know not to ask.
You can feel the energy. You're like, I don't want to.
Yeah, don't talk. Just shoot.
Put that energy anywhere but into conversation.
That's right. That's right. All right. So we let me just bring you back. So we return to Azure. We have basically you're back waking in the loft of the Drake's Chalice. Ysille, you wake early despite the large amount of, unfortunately, poor wine that's available by this time, with Viren mead ladles, cellars being cleaned out by the high number of Rapscallions who have returned to Wispen Vale. But you still feel quite buoyant after yesterday's success and the journey of the day, and being back here and being out of the rain and warm. You open the counter, and as you like stepping over the hay, the straw that's in this loft, you sort of look over and you see the sleeping figure of Windra looking, as you open the window up to have a look, unconsciously in sleep, looking quite disappointed with the outcome of the morning already. And because there's this quiet, cool, clear morning ahead of you. You notice that the sounds of the village of Ispenvale are quite extensive, because a lot of those service industries that would normally perhaps be in bed for another half an hour or so if it were a regular day are up and about, bakers preparing for the high volume of rapscallions that are camped in the village itself. As you're not quite sure why, but you reach down and you use the powers available to you to reach and feel the Harleyan token in your hand. You pull it out, and as you gaze at it, you see the symbol of the seer. Two faces that seem to be joined together, printed on this coin. You became aware when you were there briefly that the Harleyan Oracle is reborn in a normal lifespan. They do not live a lifespan beyond those around them. They are born, however, with the prescience of knowing when they will die, on what day, at what time. And they build their whole lives around it. And each token is milled again. Sometimes the token is given to somebody and they will query that why is mine different to others? And that is because you have been given a token that your prophecy lies with a future oracle, not the one who is giving prophecy today. But that sort of sense of wonderment, not melancholy, just wonderment about the whole concept of the oracle itself. And then you put that token back and look out of the window, and primarily because you hear the clopping of horses, and you see that from the south side of the low sort of palisade fence that surrounds the village of Ispenvale, you see a troop of horses clearly carrying the insignia of Hadring's Anvil, of the Duke, riding into the village itself. But quickly go out of sight behind some of the rare taller buildings in Ispenvale.
How many men strong is that company?
You would say probably about 25 to 30, perhaps. At the head of that group, you did see what looked to be a noble of some kind. Somebody of rank was leading the group. As they disappear, you think that what they have done is they are taking the path. There is a cobbled path which goes from the village itself up the rise to Ispenvale Manor itself, under which, of course, within that hill, Anvilhall is built within the hill below. You're all aware that Ispenvale exists as an obvious secret. There is no lack of awareness amongst the authorities of the Duke that Anvilhall exists, as do the Rapscallions. And there's existing arrangements that the Duke is not required to pay for the services of the Rapscallions on occasion. But the Order does not allow its services always to go unaccounted for. So even the Duke pays. So it is interesting that Duke Ordrog has sent a group of troops to Ispenvale. Okay. So you come away from the windows, you start to see that your companions are stirring. Filialis, you sort of rock up onto your feet with your own. You have no real clear recollection of what you were doing last night. That it had something to do with wrestling. You do know that. Your head is splitting. And as your companions look at they see that your robes are covered in, like road mud and stuff from the floor where there was obviously you were wrestling the night before. But your wrapped braces that protect your arms, as always, remain perfectly clean, like a white grey linen, attracting no mud whatsoever. But yes, you get up as there is like a bit of a light tap at the door, and on the far side you can smell the smell of perhaps like warm honey and raisin cakes or something coming through the door frame. All right, Ysille, you're on your feet as your companions are sort of starting to haul themselves out of the straw.
Yeah, wake up. It is time for us. What time are we to be at the hall? Is there actually a time, or is it?
It's actually tonight. So effectively, the gates to the hall do not open externally except at night. Just habit, really, more than anything else.
How about for getting rid of the body that we're carrying?
Exactly. It's something that you would think would be. You definitely would be able to gain extraordinary access for that purpose. As you know, that word has already come back. That the chapter house knows that Imlardi is dead, because they've already been advised via the coda.
Yeah. So I say it is time to bring Imlardi to see the record keeper.
So as you pop open to the door in response to that scent and that light tap, and you see one of the servers from the inn who looks exhausted, because there was such a big crowd. They stayed open, obviously, much later than they normally would. So many guests, and this young lad comes in with a sort of a fatigued smile, and he pops down a tray, and it does have these sort of nice flat sort of cakes that seem to have raisins within them and some dried fruit. So it looks like that Viren and her kitchen have been up early, either scouring the bakers or doing some baking of their own to provide something from what they have left: flour, dried fruit, some nuts. The place has absolutely been scoured. You did notice, actually, down on the base of the valley coming up from the road from Hadrig's Anvil, you saw quite a lot of carts making their way. So there's clearly been summoning for supplies from the city itself.
Yeah, no, I'm using my prestidigitation to make sure everybody is looking exceptionally clean.
Okay, so you blast everybody. So Filialis, you're sitting there, and then suddenly the sleeve of your sort of worn green wooden cloak is sort of suddenly looks as clean as your wraps.
Thank you, mate.
Yeah. So as you do that, Windra, you look across at Filialis and look at that sort of domino hair that she has. That sort of whiteness that goes through on one side of her head and through, because normally, Filialis, you usually keep your hood up virtually all the time. It's very rare you don't, and it usually only becomes dislodged when you sleep. You have a thing, Filialis, about not sleeping in your boots. You don't do it. You always have to take your boots off in your socks. So it's always the only time Filialis ever gets caught out is to try and find her boots during some sort of getaway action.
I think Windra would kind of just not say too much to anyone and just take a big old swig of coffee.
Coffee from the mug. Yeah. So the rest of you all sort of, with the exception of Damien, politely decline coffee. But David, as always, accepts his cup. Looking out of the window while he's doing
It's
that.
a bit like the honey cakes.
Yes, that's right. While you're having that drink. So yeah, your clothes are. You're looking very clean. You can't do anything about the threadbareness of them. They're clean where you've got a bit of a rent, that kind of thing. But you're clean, and clean and washed. So you make whatever your arrangements that you need. When you go downstairs, Viren just directs you to one of the stable hands that she has, who takes you out, and the stables are just packed to the rafters. They've got horses side by side. They've tried to match with temperament, so there's no fighting, that kind of stuff, just so they've got some room. But they made a spot near like the vents at the back that air would normally move through in summer. So, with the obvious intent to keep Imlardi's shrouded body cool, despite Damien's assurances that he had provided, magical energies to maintain that. No.
Yeah, so again, a bit of prestidigitation, just to clean all the I guess the hay off of the body and the hay soil, I guess.
Yep.
Yeah.
And that cleans like the stains from those venom wolves and the mud from the pole you've been using to carry it with. And again, Damien and Ysille pick up the pole to make sure that it doesn't get dirty again, being dragged on the floor if it was the other two. And, to carry that out. There's a path that runs through the back of an old temple, like a lovely but ruined and no longer used temple, which is quite of an innocuous sort of agricultural figure lost in time, maybe an avatar of one of the four elemental gods that has long been forgotten. You make your way through, and there's a lot of sort of the winter flowering low plants like the heathers and things have started to shoot, and you make your way through that path, which eventually goes into a wooded grove on sort of the northeast side of the rise, which takes you up the side of Anvilhall, the actual hill itself. You get to a certain point where there's a tree, a petrified tree, but hanging in it is what looks to be like a petrified vine, which has a knot structure. You can tell, Windra, as soon as you see that, you know that is Stormborn resin, because this is like a vine cable that would be stronger than steel. It's designed to be there forever to let you know where that entrance is, but also there is a code of knots there that tell you how it is to be used. So it's like a series of, like a direction you must push it one way, a direction you must pull it back the other, another sort of function. And you all have a level of understanding knots as writing, like in sequence. It can become more complicated. There are message knots that are put together like a ball. If you think of a concept like a Gordian knot, like the knot keepers, the knot recorders can write like huge messages in a torturingly complex knot, which is read as it's unraveled and undone by people who also speak that language. So there are certain levels of record keeping within the order that you would not understand. You just could not read it. But
so
this
we can effectively read and write basic knot.
Yeah, anything that it's more instructional and anything that has a name. So even if somebody started to unravel one of those large complex knots, you would be able to read the names in it as it was coming up past, or perhaps this must be done on this day. You might be able to read that, but the concepts in it you would not understand. So anyway, Windra, you were there. You grab hold of that knot. You follow that instruction, and as you give that last sort of pull of this cable, of knotted cable, there's like a dust sort of blast of air comes through effectively as this piece of like steel reinforced wood comes out of the thicket and just drops down in front of you, almost like a door from an older style aircraft with like a staircase built into it as it drops down in front of you. It is on the far side of a quite a well-running stream, which is still going but it's, you're starting to see the signs of ice forming in the stream, but you would still need this to cross it. It's quite deep, like almost forms a moat. So you go across, and you step forward through the doorway. On the far side, you see two Rapscallions on guard duty. Put hall guards that basically push their blades back into their scabbards and nod at you as soon as they recognise who you are.
Yeah, we continue through.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
Is this sorry? Are they asking us for why we're here, or we're just familiar enough that we can find our way to the Hall of Records? And
oh yeah, definitely.
I imagine this is a normal thing, right?
Yes. Oh look, as soon as they see you carrying a shroud through, they know why you're here, and they know why you're not here at the allotted time. So they just pass by, they nod, they give you a greeting. You know you know them. You don't know them so much. The guards themselves that reside within the hall are not active Rapscallions themselves. They are here for the purposes of just martial defence of Anvilhall. So they pass back and you make your way down. For a little while, you're making your way through a naturally occurring cavern tunnel. At one point, carrying the pole around gets a little bit tight. You've got to lift over a little bit on this side. It's like getting something down an old corridor. And eventually you make your way into the manufactured elements of this. Ysille, you bristle a little bit because, of course, all the way along there is the self-aggrandizing runic inscriptions of the dwarves who originally built this when it was once a dwarvish hall. So that was its heritage, at one point.
I run my fingers along those writings gently.
Yeah.
Just scratching them.
And again, it's always, for you, Windra, it's always good to move along around dwarvish text because you realise how so much of it synchronises with your people's own. You find you can read dwarvish text probably at about a 60% fluency. So, yeah. Just keying the walls. Yeah, basically, yes, that's what he's doing. Even to the point where, at one point where it gets a bit dark, some sparks are coming off.
Yeah.
Dagger just off to the side, just scrape it across.
Yeah. Just, No, yeah, exactly.
I feel like Windra would need to probably... Yeah, Windra would probably need to be in front of you during this, otherwise she would be a bit like...
Yeah.
Yeah.
I grab the pole across the wall every now and again.
The occasional oops anytime you realise someone notices.
Oh, well.
Yeah, or there's like a couple of dwarvish statues on each side of a doorway and you turn the pole sideways and try and get through like a dog carrying a stick. Bang!
That's right.
Bang!
That's right.
All right.
Yeah.
So you make your way down. You descend a couple of staircases as you go down towards heading down towards what effectively is the crypts or the catacomb of the hall. You make your way past what was at one point the dwarvish tombs. Now they are very well protected. They're sealed and they are patrolled. The order is very much aware of not disturbing the history of those who vacated this hall centuries before they occupied it. So you pass through there. As you get to a point where you hit more of the natural cavern as you head towards the catacombs, and above you, you see that sort of black glass that is purported to be the floor of the chamber of the spider seal up above. That sort of incredible smooth black glass that if you didn't know better, it felt like there were things moving in it. It's just the way it trapped the light and reflects the light around it. Like this corridor is almost brilliantly white, but reflecting off a black surface. You know, bending that light somehow. You make your way into more of an administrative area. So the actual catacomb itself, which is used for the purposes of the Rapscallions, is actually adjacent to their infirmary, where, you know, if there's anybody there or treatment needs to be provided. As you come through, one of the attendants of the infirmary approaches you. The first person that he recognises is Damien, because he's aware that Damien has medical skill and, you know, so that kind of surgical skill, and has obviously spoken to him in the past. He sees what you're carrying and he goes, "Oh yes, of course. You're a member of your knot who has come to be put to rest. If you will follow me, we will take her into the catacombs for sealing, and we will organize for you to see one of the masters of the records for her knot to be added. Please follow me." And you go down a ramp this time. And there's an ominous sense to it, because there's not as much need for a lot of light here, and it gradually gets darker. You go through a doorway after the attendant opens the door, which is quite strong and quite heavy. And as you enter, you come into a room that's possibly 60 to 70 foot high. And on either side are banks of evenly carved, like extended oval apertures. A lot are open, but ones from the ground level up are sealed. And you can see while you're there are a pair of masons working on the right-hand side wall on adding more of these apertures into the natural rock of what.
And they're sealed with stone again, are they?
Yeah, but they are. The stone is quite smooth, and it's clearly done with a form of dwarvish sort of stone magic, which to Ysille is a point of respect. This is a power from Caio to be able to do this, to shape that stone the way that they do. You see that he comes along and there's another scribe, like a medical scribe, sitting there, and they have a quiet conversation off to the side, and you pop. You're asked to put Imlardi's shrouded figure onto a bench, but that bench has like a draped sling, like a lifting sling already spread on it. So as you put her wrapped form down, it's clearly there so she can be lifted by one of these gantries up to one of these points.
Yep.
The medic, for want of a better term, turns to you and just says, "I will need to remove the shroud. She must be medically inspected after her death, for the record."
That bit there, that's happened afterwards. That's a couple of dogs playing with the body.
Okay. He looks as you start unraveling it. He sort of looks at you and looks back and goes, "Yes." Yeah. I don't think he was going to lead to the conclusion that you guys had done it.
Yeah. Well, I'm being helpful.
I know. Yes. Yeah. Of course.
With all of my non-medical knowledge,
Yeah.
just in case he didn't pick it up.
You find Damien is very quick to assist, and Filialis.
That's the wound that killed her.
Yes, you're just pointing this stuff out, like from the side.
Yeah.
Just sticking your finger in it, like there.
Yeah,
That's how
right
deep
there.
it went.
That there. Filialis, I think your own growing sense of responsibility as a Tyer. You sort of, after a little while, go and give a hand, lifting a leg, lifting the other leg so they can take the shroud, and just trying to help but not get in the way. You see that her form is gradually unwrapped, and Damien's magic, his power is evident. She looks as well as you can from the trauma that she experienced. You see that there's like a hole in her neck that's come out of her windpipe, where as you're talking about it, the medic explains to you what he understands that Gorgeant Lung Flies do, that the fly enters your airway through your nose. If it enters through your nose, it grows so quickly within seconds that it would effectively rupture your septum of your nose to get into your back of your airway. Most of the time they would enter through your mouth, which was the case with Imlardi. Her face, her eyes, nothing there is distorted. And then for a little while, as they're descending into the negative pressure of the airway, they still need to breathe as they're transforming themselves. So they puncture through the neck and leave behind like their own airline, which is surfacing. So it's sort of like the thing that's sort of calcified and dried very quickly is like if you were talking about a piece of offal or a vein, it's sticking out of that spot. And it's gone down into her body and basically broken up into its egg layer. Now, because she was already injured, you now are standing there all with that sad reality of what you all did that day. You've all pushed it to the back of your minds, but you know what you did because you were told what had to be done. And then you look at the signs of below that pipe. And Filialis, you get this horrible sense of remorse and pain and a cramping in your hands from that memory of being on her chest and crushing her airway so this thing could not get the air that it needed for its eggs to be born within her lungs. You all know, you could all see in her face, she couldn't speak, of course, because of what was going on, and she was so traumatized, but you all have that sensation in your hands, and of where you held something down. You all held an arm, you all held a leg. With her declining strength, as you effectively ended the life of one of your members of your knot, to save her from something vastly more vile, but something that had to be done. And now being confronted with what a spell like Gentle Repose cannot make go away, which is the signs of your own hands upon her, to do what you had to do. You see that the medic sees the same signs as you do, but also knows what had to be done and offers you no comment, but also does not create a problem of your dignity by offering you solace for what you did. As he makes his reports, and well, clearly by the striations and the sign within the eye, there was no chance for these eggs to generate. I believe I have no concerns about her being entombed. And he said, we will apply a new shroud, one befitting of her honour. And they bring out just this very nice white linen shroud, and they wrap it round just with like it just looks like some fibre from reed around, around her arms, around her ankles, just to stop the actual shroud from coming off. And then they grab a beautiful gold-coloured, impregnated, like roped material that they wrap around, ironically, her neck, which is the way that it gets done. And they wrap that around, and then they offer it to you, Filialis, to tie her signature knot, as is which is your role.
And I tie it, but
Yep.
like methodically, like I do it purposely slow.
Yes. So you treat it with a great deal of respect. Yeah. And you do it perfectly. The rest of you step back. Ysille, I would say that you're a very learned person from the point of view of being a courtier, right, within a court of an emperor. You're not yet as skilled as the others in relation to the internal processes of the Rapscallions themselves. But you see that what Filialis has done is something that would be deserving of somebody such as, like an Obrak, or an Obrayu being given that reward and that shrouding. And it's done in a meticulously way. Damien comments to Filialis as you step back that they've never seen one of its like. It's done with great art. And steps away and to speak more with the medic themselves. And with that, a couple of the other attendants bring the gantry over with like a cable rope, get it into the right point, and it's sort of wound down, and they hitch her form up and they lift it up and pop it onto almost like a gondola style window cleaning frame. Which they then, both at both ends, take those lines up and ratchet it up about probably 50 feet up the wall to the first vacant spot on the side where the masons are working, and they, carefully transfer her body into that aperture, and then pull, they drape up on these sort of notches part of the shroud over the top to signify to the masons that will have to be sealed in with that process. And you see the masons who are working turn around and they acknowledge it. It's not something that's immediately pressing, but it will be something they will be doing today before their workday ends to seal that in place. And the medic comes back. He comes over to you, Filialis, and a small piece of paper, but a fine piece of vellum parchment that has like perhaps animal hide that's been run very thin. And it writes to you, and there's a signature on it, and his seal has been put on top of that for the Master of Records. So you only have one task left, and that is now to attend the hall for her knot to be untied from the living and transferred to the history of that knot. As you make your way out of the catacombs, it's only a short walk, 5 minutes through the complex itself before you come to the actual Hall of Records, basically, of the knots of the Rapscallions. As soon as you walk in, you know, the fact that you're downcast, that you're carrying this chit in your hand that's been provided to you by the keeper of the catacombs, an attendant comes and takes it from you and reads it and beckons for you to come forward. None of you have ever been in here, because you haven't been back. And as you approach the door, the attendant looks at a book that he's carrying in his hands, and he turns around and he says, "You will need to address the knot of your forebear as well, Filialis."
Of guys are not.
Yeah, yes. As you walk through, when he opens the door, it's the first time any of you have been in here. It's a chamber that is built within the same cavern that the catacombs were built into. So it's about 70, 80 feet high. But from it, in the centre of the cavern, there are 10 huge thick ropes. Like they would have, if at one time when you look at them, they look so old. And the only thing, none of you, with the exception of Ysille, have seen anything like this. And the only reason, Ysille, that you have seen something like this is because you could remember that giant ship of the Wrath coming down the Great River, the Aruk.
Yeah.
And the huge ropes that were required to tie it at Selwyn. And it looks that kind of, these huge ropes, you know, probably maybe a foot across, how dense this rope was to begin with. And they are, at that point, they are hanging there. But you watch at the top that they've meticulously pulled fibres out of them. And those fibres have been carried over to another hook that comes down, that's made out of wire, and hitches onto that. And that thick part then descends further and then gets broken into more fibres. And you can see in front of you, in the knots that are tied from these giant knots of the founding knots of the order, down to their derivatives as you come down.
So as time goes on, then these knots actually change.
That's right. Time is embedded in them.
Yeah.
And when you look to the side, can I ask one of you, if you have an Arcana roll, whoever you feel is best suited to Arcana, to make a roll for me? Possibly it might have been Damien, but...
I mean, at worst, I've only got a -1.
Anybody got a 0? A neat 0?
Got a
All right.
0.
Alright, actually,
Yeah, I
perhaps
think you're the
it's
best
you.
then.
Now, obviously, there's a bit of the help action, so this will be with advantage. So 12. I think what you work out and what you strongly suspect, Ysille, is that when you look around, the bare walls, unlike, that's the thing that's so overwhelming about these two chambers. One is empty, a huge empty space in the middle, right? That seems to just create this sense of solace and around death, you know, like of omnipotence around the end of life. And its adjacent chamber that almost sort of mirrors and replicates it, except the walls are bare. There's nothing on the walls, but they are sheer and they've been dwarvishly mined with abject precision. But as you go up, you see marks on the wall. And it's a calendar. But as it descends from the roof down on both sides, you see its formation changes. And you would need to be a scholar to understand it, because at the top, it looks like what you've seen of the old empire's dialects and their keeping of time. And then you can see it's broken into what you understand is, you know, perhaps more like a Brodarian or Lacutian style, or Archostian perhaps. And it gets down again until around probably 20 feet, perhaps not that much, perhaps about 10 feet above the point of the rope, of the line you're guided to, you can see it starts coming into clear Ilathian calendar divisions. But you can see somebody has meticulously measured the distances between these time gaps. So what would have been a time frame this wide in the time of the old empire is this wide in the Ilathian time frame. So the knots are getting closer together as time goes on. So the record keeper takes you over with their book, this huge book that he's cradling, even to the point where he's got a Rafa Nadal arm. You know, like he's got this huge arm that's carrying this huge text around. He's so used to balancing this text, this small record keeper. He also, by the way, is wearing quite a magnificent sequence of knots that denote the honour of his role. They're one for each of the 10 lineages of the existing knots of the order, plus his own personal. He takes you over and he moves a couple of pages and he brings you to this line. And you see that there is a line which sits at a certain point, and the fibre hangs down, the rope fibre hangs down, and he suggests to you, Filialis says, it is both your honour and responsibility for the Knot of Gazanault in the first instance.
I'm going to provide guidance to
okay. You feel this energy, Filialis, come up through the floor, through the ancient dwarvish hued stone into you. And you've got the help action, obviously, from your companions. There is some, of course, there's some supported guidance from this record keeper, this knot keeper. But, so I will need to have to ask you to make a roll. However, in your case, you are completely familiar with the Gazanault's knot. There is no issue about you remembering its structure. This, I think, perhaps for you would be more about a skill that you feel is most appropriate. And I think, from my understanding of your character, that would probably have to be dexterity.
Yes.
Do you know what I mean? In just that kind of.
So just a flat dexterity check?
Yep. So dex check at advantage and then you've got guidance as well.
Sure.
Okay, 21. Can you give me the D4? It's already looking brilliantly well. Oh, well. But 22, like, anything above 17 is great, is a perfect replica that's been tied at the great side. It's as hard as this is to explain, but it would be a knot that stands out in the current level. And as you're sitting back, you're looking up this, and you can see some. You get like, Windra, you're looking at a knot that looks absolutely like it was tied with disrespect or dislike. Do you know what I mean? Perhaps. And that
it's
knot,
frayed, it's loose.
yeah, that knot is telling you that person either lets people down, let their knot down, did something. Not enough not to warrant not being recorded, but enough, it might have been cowardice. It might, something like that. But you find it hard to take your gaze off this knot, and the reason for that is it is a forebear knot of the knot of Kozai Kroth, your father's knot. And your knots take their history seriously. Like, you're all quite proud of the history of the knot of Gazanolt and now Filialis before you is one that has notations of knots added to it around order, around honor and success. It's sort of, it's good and bad. It makes you feel you've got a lot to live up to. So now that has been tied, and obviously you have the signature elements of that to indicate that was a Tyer's knot. So it's tied as a Tyer, the flourish that gets added to it, which has now been added to the rope chain you carry for your knot. So now you are asked. Now you do have one thing here. As Tyer of the Knot Filialis, you can either choose to tie Imlardi's knot yourself, because you have to tie her shroud, because the argument would be it would be your instruction that led to her death. Technically, because you're the boss, you're accountable for it, right? Sure. However, you can refer the knot of a fallen colleague in the record to another member of the knot. It's an honour you can bestow or a responsibility you can maintain.
Yeah, sure, I'll do it if no one else would feel like doing it.
No, we leave the decision squarely with the Tyer.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, sure, then I'll do it then.
Okay, so again, can I ask you, are you offering guidance again?
Yeah, I will.
Yeah.
I will. I won't roll it again, but you can see the description.
Yeah. So we are doing that. So 18 again. So you're probably not as familiar. You've already used a lot of energy with Imlardi's knot on her shroud. This is still magnificent. It's still a great tie of the knot. And so there it is. And as your hands come off that strand, and as you look up towards the gigantic originator rope at the top, you can't help but think that you hope that it's not you that has to tie another knot. You're hoping, if anything, it'd be someone tying yours. And you finally understand a couple of the things Gazanolt said to you all about the role of a Tyer, what it really means. So the knot's tied. You see that there's a moment where you see that as you step away from it, the recorder pulls out a stylus, and you can see the stylus clearly has an enchanted property of having ink available to it at all times. And you can see that he meticulously, like a photocopier, 3D photocopier, draws these knots as they exist in the rope. And you can see there's a section of that book, that text, which is that huge book is just for the originator rope of your knot. And he's on that first blank page where he's continuing that strand's history and writing notes to it, next to it, in a meticulous hand. And you notice that everything he is writing is in an absolute expert's writing of the knot dialect. He's not using any other text. He's writing it in a knot dialect next to the knots. So yeah.
Sorry, Matt. Do we need, just mechanically, then do we need to untie Squadge's knot?
The issue at hand is there's been no determination whether Squadge is actually broken.
Right.
The one thing that you guys cannot do as a Tyer of the Knot is the only person who can make a determination as to whether a Rapscallion has breached their vow is the Hallmother, right, or the Hall Father, whoever that is, or the Master of Records, in the absence of that Hallmother. You're aware that Squadge's circumstances have been, Filialis, you've reported them faithfully and in a positive light. You know, you've made it very clear that Squadge did what he had to do to draw that danger away. You know, it's not a danger that you really understand, but you're quite certain someone like Ysille, the Hallmother, would have access to information to be very clear on the threat that woman posed by being able to track Squadge.
Yeah.
But you have heard nothing yet. It's been almost a year, or over a year, and you have had no determination conveyed to you. But you're at Anvilhall now for the first time in all that time. So this may be when you hear it. But you doubt it, based on these momentous events of every knot being recalled. You doubt you will get the clarity you're looking for. You see that they, after he finishes making that copy into that strand, he closes the book, like waits for a little while for this ink to dry, but you think it has an enchanted property which is there to preserve the context of the book. And you see as he steps back, he moves his hand over the book, and it's almost like the text seals and changes. Windra, could you give me a perception roll, please? Okay. You look at it and you're confident, it's with advantage, you're confident that book was made by your people. You don't think those pages could be torn. And he stands there and just looks at the rope quietly for a little while, and you're not quite sure, but he's obviously honouring it. And after a couple of minutes, he turns back from silently looking at the knots that you've tied. And he says, "The Lady of Luck is no doubt blessing them now. Thank you, as it is always good to see someone's record kept." And he just moves past you. You know, with no need for you to leave. There's no suggestion you have to go. Obviously giving you an opportunity to stay for a little while if you want. And why do you think, Windra? Do you think it was because you're still focusing on that knot, that knot in your father's history? You've made a mental note of it. Like you can convey that knot to your father or to one of his knot members who you know. They're almost like uncles and aunts to you. You've known them since you were a child.
So does that mean Windra actually recognises who that knot is?
No, and that's one of the reasons, because it's not something that's ever been talked about.
Right.
I think she'd be like racking her brain about if maybe this was someone from before her birth or something that they have shunned from history and recollection.
Yeah. The piece that, Windra, you don't have to your advantage is because you haven't noticed what Ysille noticed about the time frames on the wall. So to you it's a sequence of knots. You know it's a history. You know that it's one person, but to you it's more one person after the other. It's like a sequence, a natural sequence of record keeping. Whereas Ysille is looking at this from the point of view of, in this strand there's a knot at his, like at Ishilu's eye line, right? and he looks at that knot, but because of the gap between the knots, you've got like a basic theory, Ysille, that that person's knot was tied there in death maybe 80 years ago. Whereas this one, hanging next to you, there are more knots closer together. And because of that placement, the distances between them would argue that person perhaps only died a couple of years ago. But even though they're hanging at the same height. So it's sort of like it's a combination of the rate of death compared to the time frames around them.
Yeah.
So it's quite interesting, and you come away with a theory that you can't quite capture because you're not an academic, but you're good at remembering names and people because that was your job.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas,
and their connection.
yes, and the connections, absolutely. Whereas Windra was more of her people are more into the flow, the elemental artistry of the material, of flexible material. That's their specialty, you know. Right. Not Noah. Maybe that's what we should call them. That could become like canon in the campaign.
Yeah, it's a bit more of like a colloquial term for them.
Yeah, not Noah. Like the record keepers, the not Noahs. Get a beer for the not Noah.
But it's really disrespectful to say it to them in this like place and circumstance.
here, no,
outside
no.
of it, like, it's the not Noah, you know.
Yeah.
Noah, the not Noah, you know.
Yeah, Dad was a
Yeah,
not
no,
Noah.
that's,
Yeah. Dad was a not Noah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting thing you say that. I will just tell you that one of those ropes that hangs down, one of the original founding ropes, is actually the record of the knot recording arm. So when the first orders, the first 10 were established, one of those was established to be the record keepers of their order itself.
Which Ysille takes note, and I'll roll for it because and I imagine it's a perception or an insight, maybe. Yeah. Oh, piss poor. But which knot has the most deaths, and which one has the least? Like which strand, and what those strands belong to and represent.
You clearly can see, and you dismiss quickly, the ropes that descend from the academics and the record keepers. They're all long lives based on your growing theory of how this is counted, because they're not in combat, they're not exposed. You see, though, it does interest you that at a couple of times, as you're walking out of the building, out of the hall, and you look back, that there are sequences even in their line where there's a lot of clustering of knots, like an upheaval periods, perhaps. You know, that kind of thing where, you know, there must have been the reasonable amounts of insurrection if the bookkeepers basically are the ones that are dying on a quick basis, or a purge or something like that. When you do though get to the door, you would argue that the rope, which is the history of the orders that Windra's father are a part of, his knots part of, are definitely the ones who seem to have the greatest numbers of death as you go down. Because there is a denotation knot which sits there. So as disturbing as it is when Filialis first walked in, the record keepers have actually put a signatory knot off to the side, just with like a hessian but storm plain fibre that's almost indestructible with Filialis's knot. It's like an offshoot that at this time the knot became that of Filialis, even though Filialis was not dead. Yeah. That's how they keep the record, right? So that knot is there, and you can see to the side on the one that has that greatest history is the knot of, like, that Kozai Kroth's knot is on, you know, that Windra's father is a part of. And you look at that has a history. Interesting history. And there's an offshoot from that, which is Ordrimer, who you know. Ordrimer is another famous Tyer in the order. His order is known as the Futiles, because they keep being given jobs that are futile. You know, they come back from these sort of dangerous jobs. And the one thing that you are aware of, which is, you guys might have forgotten as players yourself, but Gazanault was a member of the order of the Knot of Kozai Kroth, and also a member of the Futiles. So a member of a knot can transfer. You're not tied to the same knot for life. You know, if there's a need in another knot for a certain task to move, they will approach someone that has the right skills and ask them, are they willing to be untied from their knot for this great purpose, to be tied to another? And Gazanault was a very rare individual, that he was one of the few people who's been in more than 2 knots. Now, the most important thing for you to remember as players about the Knot of Ordrimer is the Tyer of Ordrimer's knot did not die. Their Tyer became the Hallmother, Ysille. And as soon as you become the Hallmother or father of the order in a chapter house, so she's the most important one in the order, because there aren't that many chapter houses of the order, and Anvilhall is the great hall. It's that she's the boss cocky. But she had to surrender being a Tyer to ascend to that role. So Ordrimer would have been appointed by her knot when she took on that title and that role to take over from. So at one point, Ysille was the leader of the Futiles. So she is a daunting individual on many levels.
What's her name? Sorry?
Yeah.
What was her name?
Ysille. I'll pop it in the chat for you. If I can actually find out where my mouse has gone. Isn't it good when you've got so many screens and your mouse has just disappeared somewhere? Oh, there it is.
That's why you get that little, I think they've got it on Apple computers where you wiggle your mouse and then it gets really large. So you know where it is.
Yeah, that's really there. That would be good.
I think you can get like a plug-in, or I don't know what computer words, but like where it does that on your mouse for.
Yeah, you can get that little app thing that puts like a big bright circle around it, doesn't it? Yeah. Not Nora.
Are we back in the keep going?
That's good. All right, so I hope that isn't an overdump of lore. So is that any questions about that structure?
I would probably have a question not about the structure so much as Windra's own personal sort of experience. Would she be able to like spot like knots of people on her father's like line that she recognizes? Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, you know the knot, the individual signature knots of the members of the Knot of Kroth, right? You know them intimately, so you can pick all of them without any issue whatsoever. You did know that Gazanault was in their knot for a little while. Your father had mentioned that, but he described it as brief. It wasn't long before he left and took over his own knot. Yeah.
Windra would probably try to show some level of respect for, like whether it's like sort of like touching each knot that she recognizes or something, and kind of like hesitating over the really loose and scrappy looking one, where she kind of like, I don't know if I should show respect to this one.
Yes.
And sort of maybe skipping it, but lingering on it for a bit. Yeah.
So what I'm going to say, Annie, is could you make a knot, make a bloody note, in relation to the fact that I will give you a +2 advantage on studying or trying to determine knot signatures, because you've just gained this real sort of insight into them while you're there. So
Yeah, I'm gonna write it down as +2 on not knowledge. So
yes. So
Yeah.
in the case of what I'm going to say, you're going to walk out of that hall where Windrow, you've gained this sort of insight into the determination of knots and almost being able to pick in some ways the names of people or what they are, because sometimes a knot for a member, a signature knot, is more about an affectation. So it can be misleading. It could be about how they're described. You know what I mean? Like there are some people, you know how we all have a friend who is known by a nickname rather than their name? Do you know what I mean? Like it's that level of insight between the two. I think in your case, Filialis, I'm going to say that you have just gained this almost sense of artistry, in the sense of you think maybe when you think about the piece you're looking for in the future, when the time comes that you're seeking that piece, that maybe might be the role for you. You know, that feeling of calm you get in tying that knot magnificently. You know, that sort of that sense of artistry that goes with it. And I'm going to say that from a combination is that in future between the lot of you, you'll get an advantage in relating to, basically, not knowledge. Very good, good point. You will all have an advantage collectively on a group assignment because of his history as a courtier. Usually you've gained this big insight into the time frames of these people. You know, you've got your head around the time. And what I'll say is that all of you can work on this as a downtime thing for your character. So there's a period in the campaign where you want to sit more and do those kind of things and study more. Like, I'll say, Filialis, you've gained a real respect today for Stormborn artistry in relation to the way they can make resins and treat flexible organic things, you know, to make them last forever. And you gain this real interest that you want to see how this is done, you know, that kind of thing. Yeah. It's not knowledge. It's not. That's good. We should copy that. You should snip that out or copy that out and send it to me, Annie, in Discord. I might use that as part of the...
Yeah, maybe it's amongst the not knowers. That's a bit of a not joke.
Yeah, a not
not knowers.
Yeah,
They're stuck down in here a lot alone, so they're gonna have their own humour.
So is it fair to say then that if you're talking about, if you're trying to do like a knock joke, it's now a not joke, because you sort of basically you know.
Not who died.
Yeah, not who killed so and so on a commission and so and so, but you can't give the right answer because that's not a knock joke. Okay. So you're guided out, and as you move back into the central ramp chamber to start making your way back up and out to Ispen Vale, you can see that at the top of the alternate ramp, you can see the great doors to the chamber of the spider seal are open, which is the huge meeting hall, right? These titanic doors, dwarvish doors that are made out of a mixture of iron and stone, and they're opened with chains on sort of, cranks that they just crank these doors open to drag them open. And you can see that they're going in there, and servitor sort of staff are going into the hall to clean it, because it's not a space that you normally go into often. It's used rarely because of the chamber of the spider seal, and you don't really know much about it. Everybody, it's one of those things where members talk about that chamber, but no one knows much about it. Okay.
So are we early if we go in there then?
Oh, you'd be super early. Like,
Yeah.
you'd be getting in the way of the people that are sweeping the floor. But yeah, by all means, if you want to go in there.
But,
No
would
one's
that
no
be
one's stopping you. You're not being observed. You're not being guided. Now that you've done what you needed to do, you're on your own.
well, Filialis, I have a need not to see the greedy pig man we saw on the way in. Perhaps we can dwell within these halls, offer our assistance to the servitors. That wouldn't be seen as being crawly or anything, Matt, would it?
No, no, not at all. The
I mean, we're
basically
here, we're waiting for the occurrence to happen.
the members of the order and the people who work for them, it's very communistic in the sense that it's a very egalitarian organization. Like Ysille is respected because of her power, but she doesn't get better food. She doesn't get a higher place at a table.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm happy to go out into the streets and bide our time, but may get a better seat should we be here earlier.
Avoid the ugly Quilled.
Is that his name, is it? What is it?
Yeah, Quilled, I think. I wrote in my book from last session was fuck Quilled, and that's it. I was like, that's all we need. I'll remember.
Well, if it wasn't, it is now.
Excellent.
Yeah, that's how we know him. Yeah, okay. That's just my suggestion.
You see that the while you're there, so as you walk through, you see that the cleaning staff are cleaning off all the fixed stone benches. At one point, this hall would have been probably like a large military sort of encampment for a dwarvish lord. There are fixed stone benches that have been carved out of the very stone around them, and they are dusty. There's a large, like a stage at the end of the hall. It's when you work out now that effectively the complex, the four main halls, you have the Hall of the Records on one side. Equidistant the other side, you have the Catacombs. Then on the other side, there are two halls, but they sit slightly higher. You're going up ramps, so effectively absorbing the space between the two. When you get to this floor, you see that the dwarvish stone carved ramp transitions, like they've married in around this like black glass that the floor base is made of the hall. And when you walk through, to the left of you, there is a titanic, round steel and stone door built into one of the walls. Like it would be the door that a giant or a dragon would use to close, their door.
I think.
Yeah.
Oh, I was going to say, I think just based on the fact that she was already feeling pretty shitty because of the weather, she'd look at that steel and just go, like really holds it back, that little gag.
But you come in, and as you are looking at that, you see the embedded machine creature of the giant spider that's embedded into the wall over the door. Now you can see that the wall, the floor, and the door, and the spider have clearly appeared at different times. It wasn't built by the same people. This was gradually retrofitted. And this giant construct statue spider that covers this door frame was the last thing to be added. When you look through, you can see that the spider's legs are embedded in stone. But when you look closely, you can see that they're not merging. It's not some kind of earth elemental merger into the stone. The legs have been sort of fitted and designed to go into natural fissures, which fit the leg to a certain point. So one of the 8 legs has gone into, like, for want of a better description, to elbow depth at one point to fill that hole perfectly. Another has only gone into wrist depth to fill that hole perfectly. But as you move forward, for those of you who have, and realistically your party, perhaps with the exception of Damien, is very much earth elementally focused in some ways and air elementally focused in others. So particularly from an earth perspective, definitely Ysille because of Kaio, because of that avatar. Definitely for Filialis because of because of what he is, that connection to Earth. With you, Windra, Earth is vitally important to the Stormborn because the Earth is what captures and takes away the power of Toril, like the storm, the anger, the aggression. It's the Earth that takes it, not water. Water just makes it angry. Do you know what I mean? That's the way they understand that concept of electricity and water. That just angers. And that story goes back to Toril and Ryu being a couple and no longer being a couple and separating from each other. The sky god, is the whole thing. And the reason for that is because Ryu, the sea mother, basically, was married to Toril, the god of the sky and the elements. But she fell in love with Toril's son, Arlok. His son, the god of storm, like the power of storms and lightning. And they had an affair that Toril found out about. And he turned Arlok into a creature that could never settle, that was always discharging energy, always wild, could never find peace. Because back then, the lightning was not something that sat within a storm. Toril drove. Long story short, Toril has 3 servants called the Wind Lords, and the Wind Lords are his enforcers, right? The Wind Lords dragged his son Arlok away and trapped him within wind, and he's constantly striking out with his power to try and break away from them. So that's what it's all about. And the Stormborn pledged themselves in many ways to the earth and water in a way to try and soothe the pain of Arlok, because they attribute Arlok to the birth of their culture.
I would just, on a meta basis, like to say how you said long story short and then proceeded to have an entire mythology pre-planned or on hand at the very least.
Oh, yeah.
Long story short, let's just sum up this,
Whole
religion.
culture. Their whole culture.
Andy, there's a lot more to it than that. Like, there's a lot
I
more
love a good
behind it.
myth.
Oh, yeah. There's a lot more behind it.
So, sorry, go ahead, Annie.
I was going to say, you are welcome to send me the entire mythology of it if you like, if you've got that on hand, because I am a huge lover of myths, and if there's something I can add into my character, which is like, oh yeah, like, remember that time, that wind guy, and everyone else is like, what?
The key fulcrum to understanding this mythology in this world is that the one that is perceived as the greatest evil is the one that it is most denied. So that's just something to keep that in mind. So the whole concept of in this world, fire is deemed to be the thing that influences change in people. You add fire to water, you get steam. That kind of thing, and it's basically you add fire to earth or sand, you get glass. That's sort of the way it's perceived. So fire is, or in this world, it doesn't get referred to often, but the fire entity in this world is called Nasa. And Nasa is perceived as a change agent or a chaos agent for that very point. So anyway, so if you think about it, I guess the biggest thing that I pinched is the concept of NASA is basically the Loki concept. You know, that kind of idea. Yeah, disruptor influence. Yeah. Anyway, so you walk through and straight away you offer to start helping the attendants in the hall while you're studying the spider.
Ysille offers to help by telling them which bits need the most cleaning.
Okay, you're offering. Give me a perception roll. But I'll give this to you an advantage because this is your specialty. You are a party planner.
Yeah. Lovely.
Oh, definitely. Like you're pointing out, like sort of, well, yeah, clearly people are going to be sitting here of some value, so you need to do this and you need to do that, like you've clipped a few ear holes from servants going into halls. Yep.
Like, I would like to also add, perhaps, that maybe as soon as they move away to start cleaning what you told them, you're like, wait, but back there.
Wait.
Wait, no, don't leave there yet, because there's still stuff to do there.
Yeah.
So you're sitting there while you're having this conversation, and Filialis, you walk up and you're just looking, and there are boundary stones. There are like these. It's like the perfectly carved floor of this point stopped, like the dwarf stopped at some point. And there are natural rocks around this door. You don't know whether there's so much dust which no one disturbs. You don't know whether this door behind this spider opens outwards or inwards. There's no indication of it. There's no disturbance. Like you can't see a hinge. But you do go looking closely and you see that in a variety of languages around the door, right? It keeps saying the same thing in a variety of dialects. And you assume it's the same thing in the dialects you cannot read. And it keeps talking, and it keeps saying, Ysille. All the way around it in this spider. So it's spelt with a Y. I'll chuck that into chat for you.
Can I try and recognise the language?
You, let me think. Give me an intelligence roll, Frischly.
Just straight intelligence?
Yeah. Yeah, it has, phonetically it sounds Archostian.
Okay.
Yeah. But, Filialis, you're just studying this thing so closely. And when you get to this boundary point, which you can feel, like, we talked about that thing that, that static that Windra gives off on those stormy days. You feel that as you're getting closer to Ysille. And you cannot step beyond those stones. There's a boundary here of some form. But you can see now closely to where the most proximal arm is. And you can see that there is like an undercurrent of energy around that point. It's like the energy of the earth or this place is being fed into this thing for when the time comes. Like it's almost like a surge of a stream. You can feel it. And you find that as you get close to the stones, you almost subconsciously, without control, start to turn into the honey badger with a sense of rage. This thing, you can feel this energy is destructive energy that's being fed into this giant construct on the side. By getting that close, you also notice something else. There are arms within its arms. You can see that. There's like apertures at the joints where you would suggest that what is 8-legged would become 16-legged. Do you know what I mean? Sort of like they
Yeah.
would slide out. You don't know if they're weapons that would slide out or tools. You don't know, but there's clearly a complexity about this. Now, what I want you to do for you, based on the fact of this experience you've had with tying these knots and things like this, I want you to roll a d20 at advantage for me.
Oh,
Oh! Roll again. Give me another one.
yeah. Ah,
You look at this and you pop your hand down onto one of these rocks and this sickening feeling comes into your gut. And you know that there will be a day where either this thing is destroyed or you will die. You know it. You're gauging this pulse. You're feeling the end, potentially the end of your life in this thing. At the moment that you do that, when that 20 comes up, you get this feeling, this sickening feeling, and you sort of hear this little noise and this quiet sort of disruption, and you look and you see on the front of it there's like a puff of like this dust drops down, and when you look up you see this multifaceted eye surface, like an eyelid, for want of a better term, has slightly opened, and this thing looks back at you, and you know. Make an insight roll for me at advantage. Oh, you just know there was something in this. There was something, and you see the eye shut again. There was something you just could have learnt from that. But the feeling does not go away, and you turn around, and even turning your back on it gives you the chills. The badger wants to run now. Like, it's got over its initial rage, and the first time in your life you feel the creature within you would rather run than face this. So you walk back and you turn around, you're listening to Ysille, like giving the servants a hard time. And then you watch at the end of the hall, and you see that an old grey-haired man, but with very, very formal robes, is walking around with a group of knot keepers. And as you look, you can see that the knot scribe, basically the master of knots, or one of them, Presumptus. You know Presumptus. You've met him before. He's one of those old men who is important, but he's actually a very nice man, but he needs to try and not be a nice man because he thinks that's part of his job. Do you know what I mean? He's sort of, and he's walking along, and what they're doing is, you can see they're placing down effectively seating cards that have effigies of the knots drawn by the scribes that they're putting down on these benches for these orders, that for the knots as to where they're going to sit. There will be, you don't just come in and sit where you like. And then when he looks up and sees you, and he sort of looks at you like not expecting a knot to be here, and he sort of dots at you with a vague sense of just that sort of friendliness, but then this sort of formal pompousness that reasserts itself, and then carries on. He issues directions. So at the two ends of the hall, you've got Ysille issuing sort of pompous directions to the service staff, and you've got Presumptus issuing pompous sort of instructions to the knot keepers, the scribes, you know. And they're just juniors, you know, that have got all these invitations effectively to seating plan, and they're putting them down on these seats. And he walks down, and while you're still doing your bits and pieces of sort of helping out, you see he gets about 3/4 of the way down the hall, and he sort of looks and he talks to one of these youngsters, and then he looks up at you, and then he looks, and they carry on for a bit, and then he asks them again, and they get about 3/4 of the way down from the hall, so they're probably about 20, 30 feet from you, and you can hear him say, "Just check again. What? There's one in there," and they keep piling through the invitations, and you see this. Goes, "No, master. No, there's none here." So one of you can make a perception roll at advantage with the help, because you're all trying to hear what they're talking about, you know, but looking like you're not.
Well, I would like to, I see what's happening,
Yeah.
and I would like to give guidance
Yeah.
to whoever's going to listen in. And I think maybe our Tyer of the Knot has,
Mm.
being
I mean,
of-
I
of
can.
animal instinct, would have better
Mm.
hearing than any of us.
I would also like to do guidance on
So you've got
something.
dual guidance. I don't know if guidance is stackable, but what I will
Aw.
say,
Why not?
what
Yeah.
I will say to you is that the guidance roll will need to be 3 or better. So if you roll a 4, good luck to you, but at least it'll be 3.
Cool.
All right, make your roll.
Oof.
Ooh. But it was an advantage because of the help action. You're lucky 10. So you've got a minimum of 3. Roll D4 for me.
13 and 14.
So 3. So 13. You
Yeah.
look, and he's aware of you being here. And you can tell they can't find you guys.
Hmm.
Did we receive some sort of like invitation or something?
You
did
definitely
we just-
you definitely received the summons through the coda. That came to Filialis via the coda. Yeah.
Right.
So you've
But
definitely
we're
been-
not on the guest list.
No.
But we don't have a seating. We're on the guest list. It's just we don't have a table place, right? We've got
That's
an
fine.
invitation.
We'll just
Just
sit on the
not a
floor
place
in
to
the
sit.
middle, in the most inconvenient spot. We'll just sit on the floor right there.
Look, I'm happy to approach them and say, look, we hear it, we've heard of your conundrum. You cannot find us. But surely we sit at the front.
And you see, Presumptus looks up from the list and he says, "Hello, Ysille, how are you?" Well, not.
Obviously, we deserve a good spot.
The
We
front
can
is.
write cards for you.
Well, I can tell you very clearly, you do not have a place at the front rows, but we have definitely passed the place where I thought you would have been. And then he goes, and you look down, and you can see that he looks down with a slight sense of discomfort as one of the apprentices puts down the bit of parchment that has the knot of creoles. No, creoles not. And this sense of insult starts going through your head. That fucking wanker.
Yeah.
Would if I got out the coda and said this told us to be here, and would there be any sort of proof that
evidence of it?
coda,
Oh yeah, definitely,
that
definitely.
sent us here.
Yeah, so basically, not necessarily all members of the order could read the coda from the complex of the past setting of the knot, but a master could. So basically, what happens in the order is there are always three masters, like of records or masters of the knot,
Yeah.
and that's because there are three of them that know every one of the knots. Like they've got like a June Mentat memory sort of thing
Sure.
of those things. And the reason there's three of them is redundancy. So there's always one who is the Grandmaster who sits with the Hallmother, and then you have the other two who are the backups. So Presumptus might be somebody who's a little bit pompous and a little bit silly, but his mind is absolutely eidetic. He forgets nothing in relation to that. So for him, that would be child's play. He could send a coda in reverse for years and still be able to read the messages.
Yeah. So I'll get out and show that we were sent for.
Yeah.
That here is our invitation.
Yeah. So
If we're not right here, where else are we supposed to be at?
He you get the coda out, and you present it to him, put him in a position where he can't really reject it, and he takes it from you with reverence, because this is an important tool. You say, "Thank you, Elias," and he looks at it and he changes a couple of the settings on the coda, and the coda is like a living sequence of things. It moves around itself. It's like a universal joint of a codification. And he moves it back around and goes, "Yes, definitely, you were not ignored. The great device of the Hallmother definitely included you. You were not missed. It makes no sense. There is no invitation for you here." And he turns back to his pupils and goes, "Who prepared the placements for now?" And effectively, by using the word placements, he hands the coda back to you during that time. The placements are effectively a ranking. So someone has almost voided your ranking.
Yeah, and I reckon it's yeah. So who did? Yes, good question. Who did? And I look at his staff and I go, yes. Who?
I'll give you an advantage because they're on the back foot. He's on the back foot, so I'll give you that 22. And you put together all of your elocution court venom, right, in relation to this. And he stands back and he looks at you like, "Well, this is most irregular." He goes, "Have the senior recorder brought to my chambers. This must be discussed before this evening. I will find out what I can, but I will seek an audience. The Hallmother and the Master of Records are somewhat engaged. There are curious visitors afoot in Anvilhall at the moment.
We saw them this morning riding in.
If only the Duke's emissary was the end of it. Anyway, you are owed an answer, and I shall give it to you." And he looks, and you see that he's uncomfortable. He's not trying to hide it. There's something wrong. This is a man who lives his whole life with the sequence and order of things. He presides over those chambers of those records, and it's fair to say that Presumptus is the lesser of the three. So his colleague will probably take over from the Master, right? He's respected for his phenomenal memory, but probably not he's not astute in that regard. But he's the most...
Not astute.
No, he's...
Sorry, I'm just going...
Yeah.
No, every time Matt says "not," my head goes "not."
Not astute.
but he's clearly the most honest. That there's no doubt about it. There's no subterfuge in him whatsoever. So he suggests that take your rest. I understand that you lost Imlardi while you were gone. I saw the missive came through on the order of business for the day. She had not been with us long, I understand, but always never good to lose a member. And the squadge matter, that must be addressed soon. I understand that it is having some bearing on the reputation of your line. It must be resolved.
Yes, he has done a great service to the Knot by excluding danger to those within the Knot at his own peril.
If it is a word of comfort to you, I would agree wholeheartedly. But it is sadly not a decision I make. Anyway, I would suggest take your rest. Find a good meal. Most of the depositories here in the dormitories are empty. If you'll be lucky if you find dry porridge. Hopefully by this evening we'll be able to provide a decent feast before the meeting. But I would ask you, it is after sundown when everybody is meant to arrive. Return a bit before that. Come to my chambers. I will hopefully have addressed this issue by that time.
Yes, it would be a pity to miss a feast that we were invited to.
Very true. You walk through the front, you go through the central aisle as he makes his way out. There's, subsidiary entrances. It's not like there's only one way to get into this place. You go to the front and you see that on the front two benches you can see the effigies of Croth and Audrima. So clearly they are, placed as the two most powerful knots. So in the mechanics of 5e, obviously I think it's fair that you work out that, those two knots are the ones that are filled with, the very high level sort of, powerful individuals as you go through. But you do like a double check between these double rows of benches that, could sit up to 10 across, and there's one for each one of the knots that's been placed there. And again, you sweep and do not find your own knot. And for you, Filialis, this fills you with a sense of rage and disrespect. Again, that feeling that you were experiencing when you came close to that rage of being of Ysille. When you look down, was Ysille sniped this way? Does that thing have a spirit of a Tyer whose knot was disrespected in this way? But how does that make sense? Because of the great level of respect of the knots that have been tied before you in the Hall of Records. What's going on? None of it is making sense to you as you walk out.
Before we leave the hall, what sort of place cards are they? Just like a little bit of cardboard, a little bit of paper?
Yeah. Like they're a piece of Stormplane parchment, virtually indestructible. Like water repellent. They've been made to last, and they're probably used and reused while those knots are available. But this is unprecedented. They haven't had these things. You're gonna bugger it.
Yeah, I'm gonna gust off the Creole's one. I'm gonna gust it off the table.
Right, so you walk out of the hall and there's this like
Yeah.
it's a blast at 30 feet. So because you've gone to the end of the hall, right under the dais, and the hall master's chair is there. On each side, you have 2 chairs. One of those is for the Master of Records, and the other is for the Master of Commissions. All right? So they sit on each side. What you have noticed as you blast the gust off, right, is that this is unusual because they brought extra seats up onto the stage, which you've never seen before. But by saying this, you've never been to a conclave of all the knots coming to this hall. That's why they're cleaning all the dust out of it. It doesn't happen. So, but there are new chairs like that have been brought from other areas of the building. They are clearly not in the right point, but everywhere from that radius, up near the front where your father's own knot would normally sit, the futiles, 30 feet, they go blowing off and going discharging everywhere in a fit of rage. So when, you know, like all the scumbag level knots, when they come in, they'll know where to sit, but all the elite won't know where to go because all theirs are lying on the floor all disjointed as you go out the door and you pull out through the side. So you make your way out and just have this real sense that you don't want to be in here anymore. Like there's something odd about it, and all you want to do is get back to the Drake's Chalice, have a wine, have an ale, and just sit back and watch it. The morning, the Imlardi, bringing her body into place, the what you discovered in the Hall of Records, then to have this counterpoint on the other side. As you walk back down, out through the side aperture, the guardians, greet you as you leave. Filialis, you walk along and you've got your pouch on your side in the bag of holding, and you pull down and you found now that when you get angry, you reach down and you grab that talk. You grab hold of it and you hold it and you feel the energy that talk gives you, and it agrees with you. The only vibe you get from this thing is it agrees with your anger. It agrees with your rage as you walk down, as you head back to Viren's. I think, guys, given we don't have Caleb here and it was pretty heavy lore session, the first session, it's probably best if we stop here as you go back.
Yeah.
Before you go back.
I think that's great.
To the hall.
Good idea, Matt. Yeah.
All right. Any last questions about anything from today that you want to clarify, or we just move on from there?
What knot is Qualadin?
Oh, yep. Hang on a minute. Let me double check. I did make that, but now my handwriting is defeating me. I have it as Isaric.
Okay.
So yeah, I'm going to say that you head back that late mid-morning, no, probably lunchtime, and admittedly your spirits lift when you go into the Drake's Chalice. The halfling family, the mead ladles that run it, have some buoyant music going. Wagons have come up from Hadrick Zamble. It's packed again, but there's meats that have come up from the main city. There's a good meal to be had. Not so much the offering that you had the night before. New wine, new beer from the breweries, has arrived. When you get there, two things will happen prior to the next session. On one table towards the end, you see a bench where there is a group of soldiers of the Duke are drinking in the far corner of the tavern hall. The other thing is, as you walk through Windra, you look, because you've grown up knowing where you can see him. But when you look over in the corner, you see Pacrandes, who is the assassin of your father's knot, is sitting drinking alone in the far corner of the hall. You know it's him because he has a globe floating next to him on his shoulder that he got as a prize decades ago, which does a variety of things, including giving him light, but at the moment it seems to be reflecting his mood, dark, hovering on his shoulder.
I think as we end the session, I'd probably label with the intention that Winter would be keen to approach him.
Yep. And I'll say that he looks up from his goblet of wine, and you get you make eye contact with him, and he looks at you that he has something to say. Okay.
That's the one.
All right, guys. Thank you.
Oh, good.